Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Community Spotlight with the Conscious Leadership Network. I'm Nisha Zachary, the co-founder of the Conscious Leadership Network and the COO of the Authority Establishment. Down below, or where she is on your screen, there is Palace Dame, who is the CEO of Authority Establishment and the founder of the Conscious Leadership Network. And today we have with us Dr. Meredyth. And so, Dr. Meredyth, can you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Where to start? I am a board certified holistic therapist, a medical and emotional intuitive, and I homeschool my daughter. I live near the beach. I love to sleep and I love naps. And what I do with my clients is I help them to understand how their medical and physical correlate with their emotional and mental health.
Well, that was a mouthful.
Wow. Yep.
Okay, so let's start with, how do you do that? What does that even mean?
Well, let's say someone comes to me and they are addicted to some drug, or maybe they're a pyromaniac, they love fire, or they have a backache, or they have a stomach ache. The first thing I'm going to ask them is, when did it start? And what was going on in their life when that started? And then try to ask some follow-up questions. What most people don't understand is that most, if not all, of their pain is a result of unresolved emotions and trauma. And before you freak out, it's every trauma is not lights and sirens. I was on the 6 o'clock news when I was 10 event. It could be something small that in the moment doesn't really seem like it matters that much, but over time it festers. It could be a mocking laugh. It could be something that you really don't even think about, but it could be stored in your body and later on manifest into pain. And you're going to notice that backache, that headache, that throat issue far quicker than you would notice, oh, I was traumatized when I was 15, or that mocking laugh in high school set me up for being insecure and social anxiety. So we really delve into what's going on and what was going on in that time so we can kind of not circulate, we can kind of insulate when it happened and what was going on around that time and how that correlates with whatever physical or emotional pain you're in right now.
Okay, so I'm going to be 100% honest here. This is not my wheelhouse. This is more of a Palace Meredyth kind of conversation, and I'm here to observe. So, Palace, I'm going to pass this off to you.
Sure. No, I mean, I totally get it. It's energy medicine. It's about root cause, and trauma is held in the body mind. That can be the blood, the bones, the tissues, the organs, the energies, emotions, the biofields, this lifetime, past lifetime, kind of depending on, how you are approaching whatever that thing is. And so the work that Meredyth does is really profound because it's not necessarily about what's in here. It's not, it's not necessarily what's, cycling in the head and a detrimental belief system. It's what's stuck. It's what's stuck, what can't move, through the body. And so I love this. Meredyth, can you talk maybe a bit more about people with a drug addiction, for example? Like that would be a unique, a unique stuck trauma, stuck energy to move with somebody, belief systems and such.
Well, I'll go with my pyromaniac. Loved fire, would have to have a lighter, and this wouldn't just be at home, this would be at work, this would be out with friends. And they were not happy until they were around fire or they were dealing with fire. Never burned anyone or anything, just obsessed with fire and candles and things like that. So we had a hard time because some people, they really just can't figure out why they're in this pain, or they can't figure out why they have this fetish or this addiction. And turns out his obsession with fire came from back in his childhood when his family would sit around the fire at night and they were calm and they were family like and they would talk and everything was smooth and calm. And then at a time in his life, his parents got divorced, the family was dispersed, there was a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of bickering and problems, and he never found that level of peace again. So his addiction to the pyromania and the fire was really about trying to recall that time in his life when things were calm and things were cool and he was happy and he had a full family and everything was beautiful in his life. So it had nothing to do with wanting to set people afire or obsession with fire. It was obsession or wanting to call back that beautiful time in his life when everything was right in his world.
Mhm.
And then working through that, trying to find other things that give him peace and give him calm, not really giving up his candles, but maybe giving up his obsession with that and trying to reconnect with his family so that he can find that commonality, that feeling of belonging. And also, and what I teach my clients and what I probably want to teach more than anything else is finding that love, acceptance, and validation within yourself so that you're not looking outside. A lot of our pain comes from rejection, abandonment, and it starts young because our family is our first teacher, or that boyfriend, that first boyfriend, the first cut is the deepest. And knowing that you can find that love, acceptance, and validation within yourself. And then when someone else comes, you're coming to the table full. You're not searching, you're not hungry for them, you're not codependent because you're already full.
Mhm.
I
Very
love
much
that.
so.
And I've noticed, like, working with both of you, most of the time you think you know what your trauma is, you know what your issue is. You go, you're having a headache, I'm going to get my headache fixed. And what you think it is generally not what it is. There's so much other stuff. So how do you get people involved in their own healing when they think like they have all of the answers and they just need you to fix this?
Well, I try to come at the problem or the issue or the concern. I don't want to say a problem, the concern with compassion. People will open up a lot more when they feel heard and they feel seen and they feel honored. Their story, their particular situation is being validated. We all want to feel valid. And even if I disagree, which you don't have to agree with your patients for any reason at all, but I always want to make sure that they know their feelings are valid. Regardless of what it is that they feel, their feelings are valid. It's what they do with it. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it.
Mhm.
And especially a lot of my older patients, they are stuck in this is how it is, this is how it always was, this is what I think the problem is, therefore just fix it. And I have my own boundaries. So if people don't want to do the work, I have to disconnect. I have to detach from wanting because if they don't want it as badly as I do, then there's no point in continuing. So a lot of the time it's honoring what they feel is the issue and then saying, "Okay, I see that that's where you feel like you're stuck. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's probe a little bit more." And just honoring them and supporting them and validating their feelings along the way so they don't feel, especially given that I'm a lot younger than them in a lot of cases, not making them feel like, oh, I know what I'm doing, just hush and sit down. It's more, I honor your history, I honor your story. Do you mind if we go a little bit deeper? Do you mind if we probe? Do you mind if we just kind of stick a pin in here and see where else things might be resonating? Or and when you validate them and you let them understand and that you're on their side. We're in this together. It's not a me versus you. It's an us. Oftentimes they will probe and get to the bottom of it. And sometimes I had a patient, they had a back problem. I could easily see how we could fix it, but they were on disability for this back issue. They were afraid that if they heal, they were, and it isn't always just this. It's a lot of people are married to their trauma. They're married to their story. They have no idea what life will be like if they don't have this trauma, this story, because that's the walls in which they've been living. And if you take down those walls, they're exposed and they don't always know what to do with that. And you have to honor that as well. You have to understand that they're scared, they're terrified of what fixing this means. So working within those parameters also has a lot to do with how progressive the work ends up being.
Yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying. And also, in like this kind of work, I'm a medical intuitive as well, and I understand the things that you're saying. It's that when the individuals show up, it is their responsibility. They have to own their journey. You have to own doing the work. We're here to facilitate. We're here to hold space, but we're not here to do a darn thing for them. It's up for the individual to show up and be open to potential and allow, right? And like when you're talking about how individuals are married to their trauma bonding, right? There's so much about that, and it's that core level often comes from the emotional isolation of the thing that they went to, where it shifts their identity and it shifts their belief systems, and they are no longer rooted and grounded to the true self, right? The true self, and being able to unpack those things and navigate the fear associated with that. Like in conscious medicine and energy medicine, it's probably the softest kind of medicine that's out there. I know with my history, my trauma, my journey of Lyme disease, all the stuff, like I couldn't do talk therapy for me because it was all held in my nervous system. And when they started trying to get me to blah about the things, I would upregulate, I wouldn't be there, and I would have to bounce after like session 2, maybe 3, because it hadn't processed yet. And then that like what you're doing, getting to that root level to unpack that identity, that belief system, and that pathological energy that's held in the body mind, so that you can move forward past that thing.
It takes a lot of energy. You have to, it may not always be pretty, but it's worth it. I had 2 heart attacks in 16 months. That's how I got into this work. And unpacking why I, healthy, active, no medical predisposition, under 35, had 2 heart attacks in 16 months was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I was already a mom. If you're a parent or you're taking care of someone, you're a caregiver, trying to heal yourself while also taking care of someone else, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But it is worth it. I'm a better mom. I'm a better partner. I'm a better, practitioner, a better friend, a better person. I'm happier. I have my ups and downs. We all do. But I can instantly get to the root cause of what's bothering me. I got really sick the other night. I was telling her that I was so ill, but it was my body purging and going through some unpacking that I had to do. And I thought, I'm never going to get past this. And sometimes you feel that way because it's just so much pain. It's so much to unpack. But then you unpack it and it feels like you've lost 10 pounds because you've just unloaded. And as you were saying earlier, Palace, it's sometimes it's not even your energy. It's not even your trauma. It's trauma from lifetimes back. And I know everyone doesn't subscribe to that, but I realized that I went through a period of time where I was just guilty and shameful. And I'm a pretty good person, and I didn't really have I couldn't think of anything I could be that guilty and shameful about. But I did some energy work, and it was like 3 generations back that guilt and shame had just come through the generations and ancestral trauma. And I was like, oh, that's what that was. But once I unpacked it, it felt like I'd lifted 20 pounds off my shoulder and I could move forward to the next thing. There's always going to be something. It's like an onion, always peeling the layers.
Yes.
But it's on some level it gets easier, and it's just that it's for you and not at you, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you just brought up, the thing that experience for you unpacking 3 generations back, just anchoring to the 3 generations, and that if you think physiologically and biologically, like when our mother was in our grandmother's womb at 6 months of age, she had all of her eggs, and we were already there. And whatever was going on with the grandmother, the good, the bad, the trauma, the war, the beatings, the whatever was happening in their life was energetically impacting them, energetically impacting our mother, and energetically impacting us. And there's so much more like about how these things are, how these things work. But outside of the esoteric and the woo, I mean, there's been so many studies done
Yes.
about how trauma is passed down. I mean, you look at lab rats, and
Yes.
they do things with fruit flies. I think they go back like 60 some odd generations, I think, with fruit flies, and how they bring down these like reactions to such, and the lab rats or the white mice, exposing them. Sorry, my husky. Exposing them as like 3-4 generations back to a certain smell, lavender, while they're getting something horrible done to them. Then they reproduce, and generations down, nothing's done. But when these animals are exposed to that scent, they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
So this stuff, it's you anchor into the science. You anchor into the fact that this stuff is real, it's important, it's valid. And my huskies are being very loud. I'm sorry. So anyway, go ahead.
And I totally agree with that. I have a morbid fear of dogs. Anything with more legs than me, actually, but dogs. But I had a dog growing up, and I love dogs. But I get really afraid until I'm comfortable, and I prefer they're smaller. But that isn't even my trauma. That is my great great grandmother's trauma and my birth mother's trauma. And I don't know if they were attacked by dogs, but something happened.
Mhm.
But thank God, have never been attacked by a dog, or at least almost I was one time, but I already had the fear. That didn't set the fear off. And
Mhm.
you never realize how things impact you. And in kindergarten, a colleague, or not a colleague, but a classmate of mine made fun of me because she said I smacked. I don't smack. I don't. But she has this condition, I think it's called mesopotamia or something of that nature. I'm probably saying it incorrectly. But you can't stand to hear people chew. And she still has that to this
I've heard
day.
of this condition where they want to beat the fire out of whoever's like making the sound.
Yes. And it's funny because now this whole thing of ASMR where, different sounds are stimulating. But so I was 5 or 6 years old. I did not eat in front of people until my mid-20s.
Mhm.
I would move the food around, eat privately, or I would eat and hold the food in the side of my mouth. I perfected that without people seeing my food in my mouth.
Mhm.
And it was because, and she meant so much that I wouldn't eat in front of people for fear that she was right. And then I came to realize she has that condition for one. And I I wouldn't even eat in front of my mom. Like, I wouldn't eat in front of anybody because I was so afraid of embarrassing myself or choking, which I still have to have an extreme amount of drink near me, like water, just because it's my nervous system. I just get so nervous and so freaked out. But you wouldn't think that that's why. You would think it was because of my wisdom teeth or my migraines or something else, or, I had an eating disorder. But it was just that one incident in
Mhm.
kindergarten that I would not eat in front of people until my mid-20s. And sometimes I still won't eat in front of people until I'm comfortable around them because I get really excited and nobody wants my spinach in their plate.
That's a huge thing to impact for so long, throughout your life. And it goes back to like your other example. Maybe somebody made some kind of comment or some kind of snarky laugh about you, and you don't realize how like intrusive, how detrimental that experience was to your soul, to your consciousness, to your identity. Those it's soft and malleable and flexible, and you're figuring out the world, and you're just this broadcasting outwards and bringing it all in, and all of a sudden it's like it screws up that natural progression of just being.
Yes, and if people want something more solid, think of you stepped on a needle when you were 10 and that needle is still in your foot. You finally go get an x-ray and you find it's there. Or my lovely papa who had an a tooth in his ear his whole life. He lost his tooth when he was like 5, and the tooth fairy, and somehow it got in his ear. He was 80 when he died. It was there still.
Wow.
And it's like, when you take these x-rays and you see these things, that's a perfect example of how trauma is stored in the body. It's stuck in there
Mm-hmm.
until you process it. Or your food, the way you digest your food, it's still in your body until you release it. There are a lot of tangible ways to see what we're talking about if people are more tactile or analytical and they need to see or know. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's the blockage. They need concrete evidence, as if air, like we can't feel air, but we certainly know when we don't have any. That
Mm-hmm.
concrete. Some people just need that concrete. So that's an example I often use. Like if you have a foreign object in your body and they take an x-ray, it's stuck in there until you extract it or pull it out or release it or whatever you have to do to get it out.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great explanation. Which now, kind of with what we're talking about, like we're talking about the body, and I mean, having the whole time and how it can be detrimentally impacted by these things. Like, there's one, our emotions, how we show up in the world, but then you have psychoneuroimmunology, and that sounds like this is something really huge, especially in today's world. So can you explain what this is and how'd you come to this and what do you do?
That is basically where you look at how your brain, your emotions work together with your immune system to fight disease in the body, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, any type of pain, your toothaches. There's reflexology for for your dentistry. There's reflexology for every part of your body, and there's chakras, and it correlates with the organs in your body. So it's kind of marrying the psycho, which is your emotions, with the immuno, which is the way your body fights disease, and kind of marrying the two and the study of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I became sick with the two heart attacks, I heard a TED talk by Dana Pritchard, wonderful, wonderful psychoneuroimmunologist. Her modality is hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
I use meditation, but I don't actually hypnotize anyone. And I have a hard time going under myself. I think it's a great modality. Everyone has their own, bailiwick, their own tools. And she had a similar situation. She was in a car accident and she didn't like hypnotherapy, but that was the one thing that helped her. And when I had my heart attack, no one could understand why I had them. I had, cardiologists from all over the world, and they could not understand why I was having these heart attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to study. I was already in a program. This is how the divine works. I was already in a program for this, but I wanted to use it for my business coaching and my sales coaching. And I was going to do a holistic way of bringing income into your business. And I did that for a while, but it didn't feel right. And the more I got into the program, did my internship, my residency, I realized that this is what the divine had for me. Was what I came here to do, not knowing. I've been a teacher, a social worker, I've pastored for 10 years. I've done it all, but this is my mission. I did all that to get here.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished that program, did my residency, and now it's how I run my practice. People come to me for a pain, emotional, even grief, or addiction, codependency. Even though people don't come to me and say, "Hey, I'm codependent," they
Sure.
come because they have a relationship issue, or they. And I know this because I was a codependent addict for 25 years. I was addicted to something that you couldn't have told. I didn't even know I was addicted until it was taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the divine moved it because it knew I wasn't going to move it, so it moved it for me.
Right.
And I suffered, and that was the first heart attack, and then I lost some crucial people in my life. That was the second heart attack, and I had a hiccup in my life. So all these spiritual awakenings, and that's how I came to psychoneuroimmunology, and that's what I do now. And it's really just saying this pain is not what you think it is. I did a seminar on what lies beneath your abdominal pain, and we did a research study where we studied 50 people with diverticulitis, peptid ulcers, stomach aches, even ectopic pregnancies, everything abdominal, even cardiovascular. And we looked
Mm-hmm.
at them in 50 different specific studies and 50 actual participants in the study. And all of them had a traumatic incident that correlated with their physical pain. And because they would do the work, a lot of them had extreme success and healings and remission, and I'm really thankful for that because sometimes it's woo to some people, and if you keep hearing it's woo, it doesn't make sense, it's not real, you start to get a little downtrodden, but then you see the work and you see it come to life. And it's like
Mhm.
you're in a classroom, you see the light bulb go off, and you know that this is what you were meant to do. And
Mhm.
I know I had to do everything to get here and, divine timing, but this is my mission. This is what I came here to do.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So, in doing this, I'm not even going to try to say it. Um, is this part of the virtual acupuncture or?
That's one of the modalities that I utilize. It became more prevalent during COVID because people couldn't go to facilities, they couldn't see their doctor, they couldn't see their acupuncturist. And there are different ways, different practitioners do it a little differently. One practitioner sends you these, no, I'll call them stickers, but they're not. They're little things you put on your body and they kind of activate that way. Um,
Mhm.
Mine is a little more energetic. It's a 3D you. So I get a 3D version of you. I put it up on my computer, and I have literal pins, but I put them in those meridians, and I do the bioenergetic healing, the Reiki, and we do it that way. And a friend of mine, she had some infertility problems, and she now has a beautiful little baby, and we've had people to go into remission. I do it for myself, and it helps, especially when I'm at my peak of anxiety. It helps with a lot of anxiety, but it's specifically for people who are not close to me, like they're in another state or in another country, and for people like me who are not big fans of needles. But
Mhm.
it's energetic anyway. Even when you go and get the needles, it's still about that energetic. It's still about putting the pressure in the particular meridians. And I also complement it with reflexology, just because I truly believe in it's all energy. I truly believe that it helps to not put all your eggs in one basket. So it's more energetic.
Makes
And
sense.
it helps, and yeah, and it does. A lot of patients have had a lot of success, and they're more apt to do that because they don't like the needles.
Okay. Because I was like extremely confused when you said virtual acupuncture, and I'm like, there are needles involved. How do you get a needle through the screen? But what you're saying makes a lot more sense because it is about the energy, not the needle itself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's something that I came
Hello.
to.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay.
And she's back. It's 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 probably one of my more favorite ones. And then not coin, but I trademarked my own modality, the Phoenix therapy method, and that includes timeline therapy and a lot of retracing your steps, soul retrievals. I have a soul release technique that I utilize. Integration, that's been my absolute favorite. Well, that and the acupuncture have been my favorites, the reflexology. And the integration, I had it done for myself and then I started to study it more. Reintegration is so powerful because the way I do it with my patients, say there was an experience where they were assaulted or where they felt like their power was taken or their space was intruded upon. We go back into that situation energetically and we kind of rewrite the story. How would you have liked it to occur? And we go through kind of a meditative state where we reintegrate. And sometimes it's just about knowing that if you could rewrite the situation, time is relative. You got your power back. And to know that you took back what was yours is so powerful.
Mhm.
And a lot of the work that I do, I test it on myself first because we all have issues. I mean, a lot of the best healers had to heal themselves. They were looking for a healer and realized no one was coming to save them, so they became their own hero or shiro. And so it was so important to me. I had ridiculous fear and phobias. And I took myself back, or my therapist took me back into this moment where I felt my power was taken. And I was very, very young. And I didn't even remember this situation until we went into the well, not hypnotic, but the meditative state. And in that moment, I took my power back in an age appropriate way, like my inner child took her power back. And I could see my life propel in ways I never thought was possible. And I gave myself the power that I felt was taken away from me. And now I feel like I could take on the world. And I think giving somebody back something they thought was taken from them without their permission is giving them back the sword. They're able to wield their life again, and nothing compares to that. It's the most amazing gift to work with someone and help them to get to that point.
I love it.
How did you get into the spiritual root causes of things? I do a lot of that work myself. I've trained with two different doctors, a doctor who graduated from Yale, who was a clinical psychiatrist who moved into energy medicine and shamanism, and he became a holistic psychiatrist and pure shaman now. And his wife is a doctor of psychology, practicing now. So I did my work. Like, I'm one of those like healers who got to the end of my rope with everything else and everybody else. And it was either like figure it out, allow in what was being offered to me, or die. It's like that, dark night of the soul, and then put it back together. And so my spiritual root causes of dis-ease, of imbalances in the body, was just one of my legs of my journey to get me to this place, which for me is crucial now for pretty much everybody that I work with, but not everybody's open to those concepts. So like for you, how did you go there? How did you get there? And how do you facilitate that with your clients?
Well, for me, I had an undergrad in psychology, so I had the basic background, and then I went to grad school, and then I had my PhD in strategic planning and behavior modification. So I was already looking at how people's behavior could be changed and altered based on their personality and what their specific modalities were within their own body, the way they operate, their motive, their MO, their modus operandi, how they already operate. And then I'd done that for decades, and I wanted to bring my practice, and I was already a therapist. I was already doing the talk therapy and the CBT and all the traditional things. And there was very little success the way it is now. Like, you can talk it out, but until you get to the root cause, you start digging and digging and digging. It's like an excavation. You have to, dig deep. And once I got into the psychoneuroimmunology, it was like a big volcano. Like, it all started erupting and it all started to make sense. And then I had my spiritual awakening right at the beginning of my learning about psychoneuroimmunology. I think we had like 10 deaths in our family back to back, back to back, back to back.
Wow.
And they weren't, distant relatives that you can say, oh, well, I only saw them once a year. My mother, my sister, my father figure in my life, my very best friend, all of these people were starting to leave me. And I grew up like staunch religious, not spiritual. There's two different things. I grew up religious. So I thought, hey, I'm serving God. Nothing's going to touch me. I'm just untouchable. And boy, did I get the rug taken from under me. So I had to find something else that was going to fill that gaping hole. And what I'd had wasn't doing it. And it was like I tell my patients, nothing against Western medicine, but they look at the surface. And you're not going to get a real result until you look at the root cause. It's like pulling a weed up. You pull it up, it's going to grow again until you get down to the root. And that's where you're really going to find what's really going on. And a lot of people they don't want to excavate. They just want to take an aspirin and go about their day. You know, even
Mhm.
remove the limb, give me a prosthesis, and let's go on with our day. They have no idea that that leg, you don't have a leg to stand on. Where do you not feel supported? Your back is hurting. Where do you not feel supported? You're having sinus or headaches. Where are you not trusting? What's your relationship with your higher being? Not necessarily always God, whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in that's
Mhm.
bigger than you. Do you trust yourself? Where are you doubting yourself? Where are you, not speaking your truth? And people get really confused with all the woo-woo jargon, but speaking your truth is just about standing up for yourself. Where are you shrinking? And for me, that was I did a lot of shrinking in my 20s and teens and
Mhm.
very small part of my 30s, trying to fit into this box. And I tell people I was in a box for almost 4 decades without any air holes, so I almost suffocated, and it was
Mhm.
like a death. I had to die in some way to be reborn in another way.
That's why I have this phoenix feather tattoo. That is how I've talked about my
Oh my
journey
gosh,
and
I
when I
love
started
it.
coming out of it. That's my animal totem. That's just what I anchored to. I had to die my death, my spiritual death, in order to be reborn and show up in the world and pay it forward now.
I'm absolutely I would love to get a tattoo. I went through labor with no pain, but give me an I
Really?
yeah, it was I was richly blessed because it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. I was like, this is not that bad. I don't want to do it again, but it's not that bad. But give me like a tattoo, and I'm like, no, thank you. Anybody got any Vicodin? No, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Those needles.
I know that's exactly why I got into virtual acupuncture because I'm not a big fan of needles. And I mean, I went to school, for all the medical things. I can stick other people, but it's sticking myself. But I'm like, no, that's okay. Is there another way?
It's like anything else.
Yeah.
But what we were just talking about, prior to my tattoo showing up in getting to the root cause with people, and rather take an aspirin and not look, cut it off, rather than deal with what's actually happening. I like to kind of make the analogy of like when we were kids, and it was we were in bed, it was the lights were out, and maybe we were like we wanted to open up our closet to get something, but we were terrified because there's something in there that was going to get us, or we have to go to the bathroom and we don't want to get out of bed because some creepy slimy hands are going to reach out from under the bed and grab us, right? But like if we take a flashlight and we're brave enough to go and look, there ain't nothing there that we can't handle. Like
You're
it's the fear of not addressing it that is way worse than actually doing the healing work for that thing, because the thing already happened. It's or maybe it never happened, right? And it's just that monster in the closet or monster under the bed. It's not a thing. It's not real.
I ask my patients all the time, and this stumps them, and it's kind of fun to watch because you can see the light bulb in them starting to kind of crack open things. And I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? And if it does, let's create a way of how you're going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time, the worst is not going to happen. But if it does, let's just have a plan. A lot of it is just losing control. They're worried that they don't have a plan. And I am like a type A control freak. I need a plan. And I'm also
Mm-hmm.
the person who won't hang their foot over the bed at night. So I know, and it
Oh
seems
my gosh.
so it seems so illogical, but it's in that moment, it
Mm-hmm.
does seem like the boogeyman is gonna come out and get you. And
Mm-hmm.
my daughter, of course, my daughter lives with me. She's only 9 and a half, and you know, her great grandmother, my grandmother who raised me, passed away. It was the worst thing of my life. I was completely lost for like a year. If anybody asked me what happened that year, I could not tell you. It's unless there's a picture, I don't remember it. So her outfit, my grandmother was a diva in real life, so we had her funeral that way. She had two different outfits. She had one for the first service and a second dress for the second service. Same hat though, but different dress, different outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first outfit, of course, she didn't need that anymore. So because she was buried in the second outfit. So I have the first outfit. I'm not wearing it or anything, but it's in a box with her
Mm-hmm.
hat, her favorite hat and her Bible. She was a evangelist, a minister, pastor. And I swear to all things holy, I will find stuff that was not there. I moved in the time frame that she's passed away. I found cards. I find notes. I have voicemails that'll pop up in my voicemail machine. I kid you not. She's been gone almost 5 years. I'll still get a random voicemail. I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from? It was not there. I'll find a card that's like, and one card was so funny. It was like, just to remind you of the good old days. And I'm like, this card was not here. I swear to God, it was not here, you people. And it's like, but then it's like in law class, reasonable doubt. It's like, I know it wasn't there, but it's there now. Or something will fall, or I'll see something, or my daughter will say something she can't possibly know. My grandmother used to call me squirrel. Nobody knows that. My daughter was like, oh, mommy, you know how you like squirrels? Or she'll say something about a squirrel. And I'm like, come on through, Marie. Come on through.
This is profound. I have goosebumps, not in a bad way, just in like, this is so true. It's like solidly true. It's beautiful.
It is. And it's like, you can't deny it. Like I tell people, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, I have a great imagination, but not that great. And it's just those things that keep you tapped into it's possible.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard the saying from Audrey Hepburn, nothing's impossible. The word itself says I'm possible. You just have to be open to it. Imagine what you're denying yourself by clenching onto. It can't happen. It just can't. As soon as you let go, you open this entire new door of all that's possible. And just for curiosity's sake, I want to know what's possible. Like, what's the next thing that could happen? Things flying off the walls. As long as they go back to where they were, otherwise they're not going to go back.
Right? No, exactly. It's potential and possibility. That's where all the miracles happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Meredyth, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening us on all the things that are possible when we start to dig deep and actually look for answers under what's going on with our bodies and in our minds. Palace, thank you for adding your woo-woo insight to it as well. The two of you were able to play off of each other very well, and that was amazing to watch. So if you are just now joining us and you're catching the replay, go back to the beginning and watch this in its entirety, and then check out Palace and Meredyth on their Facebook pages, which we will link below. Meredyth, again, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to say?
This has been fantastic. I want to spend like weeks talking to Dr. Meredyth. Oh my gosh, you're phenomenal.
You too, definitely, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. See you next time.
Thank you.